sections. And sometimes when I'm at the drugstore buying hunks like 20 or 30 dividers, people say, pardon me, but what is that for? Like last week I bought 10 boxes of mastic Scotch tape, and a woman behind me said, I don't mean to be inquisitive, what's that for? I said, well, I do research, you know. Okay, I compiled 28,000 typewritten pages, cross-filing the Russian community in the Fort Worth area, just that area, Phil. And this is the way the dividers line up, and this is what is going into the computers in Washington, and this is why they can't say now there's no new evidence, because we have the fact. I have a book called Background, and that background covers all the people. It says these people had a common interest, culture, and language, and I went into each witness as he's called. Your name is George de Morenchild. Yes. What do you do for employment? How did you come to this country? What did you do, you know, before you came here? And where they were born, how they came to the United States, or if they were born in the United States, where they came from, what jobs they always held, and what jobs they held up to the time of the assassination goes into background. And I came through a pattern of an emigre group that had one thing in common, and that was that they were all thrown out at the time of the Russian Revolution, you know, by Trotsky. They were displaced, the oil families, wealthy families that moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But when one woman is called to testify, a particular woman, they say, Mrs. Voshinin, how did you happen to come to the Dallas-Fort Worth area? She said, well, we came over here and arrived in New Jersey, and there were too many of us, so they sent us to Houston, and from Houston they go to the Greek Orthodox Church to Fort Worth or Dallas. Now, this is all new material, Phil. This is the subject on which I work. There were too many of us, so they sent us, and then I began going into the intelligence system and the operation, like who is sending us and them. So background is how they came here, and that gets all the way into the intelligence operation in the United States. But you see, I have a book on background. Then I had another section on how met, because the commission would say, was there an occasion where you met Lee and Marina Oswald? And the reason I had to compile 300 or 400 pages on how met was that people who were saying things about Lee Oswald that Louis Nizer was saying in the Warren Report had never met him or his wife in their life. Or they had met Marina and they'd never met Lee. And it became overwhelming that Marina was feeding them information about her husband as a person that didn't back up the documents. And you had to say, why was she doing it? So I have a book, Marina Against Lee, or Marina Lies. Now, a fellow researcher in Los Angeles who was in Washington just this summer, went into the National Archives, and it was his first trip there. So while he was there, he got documents, microfilms, and copied papers for me because he knows my area of research. So declassified now are minutes of the working staff, the lawyers, not the Warren Commission, but the lawyers. And he is setting me up now and copying in L.A. The minutes of the meeting with the lawyers say, what will we do with Marina? She's telling so many lies. Should we give her a polygraph test? See, I've finished my research on Marina, and when I do my book, I'll include what the lawyers knew about her. How can we handle her? Like, she says she's living with the Halls because Lee doesn't have a job, and nobody will believe it because he has this job. What are we going to do with her? Well, my research is done. So I have a book, How Met, because in creating a thing and you're talking about a person saying some pretty heavy things, if you never met him, somebody is feeding you that information. Then I have a book, How Many Times Together, because people were saying that he beat his wife, he was not kind to her, and I wanted to know who was saying it and did they ever see them in any marital situation. Then I have Marina alone. Which witnesses were alone with Marina Oswald, where Lee was never present? Like George de Morenchild's first introduction to her is he comes down to her apartment, knocks on the door with a Colonel Orloff, who says, I'm George de Morenchild, and this is Colonel Orloff. And that's a heavy name. I could blow your minds with this information on Orloff. And why does he want to see Marina? Because she's a little Russian babushki from the same town. And we had so much in common because I passed through the village. Don't buy it. It's just not the why he was alone. Then, where I get discrepancies like times with Marina alone, they would call a witness like George Bowie, and the Warren Commission would say, Mr. Bowie, was there an occasion where you met Lee and Marina Oswald? He says, yes, I was at a dinner party. Mr. Gregory had a dinner party, and I took Mrs. Meller, and we met them. But the night of the assassination, or the day after, on November 23rd, the FBI had a report in the back of the volumes of George Bowie, and they said, how did you know Lee Oswald? And George Bowie told the FBI, I met him through his wife. I was at her apartment, and I met him through his wife. So I would cross-file this under discrepancies. It had a meaning to me, because these men, these wealthy people in the community, were alone with Marina. And Marina was creating the motive for the Warren Commission. You know, we talked in the very first show about Marina Oswald, that everything has been quiet now. And these are the things I'm putting into a book, but because they affect our life, I have to go into those. Then I did the opinion of their marriage. Now, I'll run down, when I'm reading these classifications for the people, Phil, what I'm doing is, if I say a book, I've got 300 pages on it, cross-filed. These aren't just titles. See, the opinion of their marriage, the love of the Russian language, because every person used the excuse that we housed Marina. Like Mrs. Payne said, Marina lived with me because I want to learn the Russian language. Michael Payne had a security clearance. He was a designer for helicopters at Bell Aerospace. The vice president of Bell Aerospace is Mr. Dornberger, a Nazi scientist that came over with von Braun. These people are heavy in security clearances. Supposedly Lee Oswald was getting all his communist literature at their house. But it all arrived after he was dead. I went into subscriptions. I went into magazines. The post office gets a daily worker in his box after he's dead, but nobody noticed it when he was living. You see, so I go into the love of Russian language as an excuse for meeting, and what there was good about Lee Oswald. Now, I could go, Phil, time is running out, and I have 70 books on Lee the Agent, which is 28,000 pages. But I think the people listening today will see, I took the Warren Report, read that, and went into the background of these people, assuming they're telling me the truth, and came out with a pattern so horrendous that after reading it for 2 years, the material, then I devised a cross-filing system which took another 5 years to show who was saying these remarks. And the important significance historically, Phil, is that a man like Louis Nizer can be used, put his reputation on the line, and not one word that he said was true. And that is a crime in this country, because we depend upon these people for some wisdom.
Now, where do you go with these facts? And one of the things I think has to be stressed is that you're not fabricating these things, that what your work is doing, and stop me if I'm wrong, but what your work is doing and what your research is doing is compiling, checking, counter-checking, comparing all the various facts which have been used to draw conclusions, which in many cases you've shown to be false.
That's right. If we say that Oswald, if we need a motive for the commission, we say Oswald doesn't have a job, let's read what Riley Coffey says, or Jaggers Chili, or all these various things, and let's say he couldn't hold the job. But if I find, like he says, he was resented, he felt rejected. Lee Oswald wanted to go in the service when he was 16 years old. His brothers both were in the service. They turned him down because he was too young. By the time he was 17, he had memorized the entire Marine manual, and when he went in, he went right off to specialized training. This is a fact. The documents and the degrees are there. Now, when Lee Oswald, when you say he was rejected from this or that, he was skilled in language skills, microdotting, he had the equipment of an agent in his garage. We talked about the electronic devices and pedometers and all these different things. I've taken the facts. I read the report saying, okay, these people wanted to be nice to them. But when you say a man is a killer and you don't know him, you're not really being very nice to him, and you have to then go back. Why would they say these things? Who are they connected with? What is their purpose?
You could spend probably 2 shows on the next question, but you seem to, in just the show today, you seem to have established that for some reason Marina Oswald is telling a different story than what the facts would support as far as conclusions go. And can you really say why?
Well,
why she's doing this, or why it appears that she's doing this?
Well, yes, we could do a show. I think one reason, she came from a wealthy family originally. Her background, she's not peasant stock. They were pushed aside by the communist takeover. Her grandmama taught her French and told her she was a lady, and now she was living a hard life in the Soviet Union. Lee Oswald wrote a letter, which we talked on another program, dated February the 9th. It's in volume 16, page 33. He wrote a letter to the embassy in Washington, Soviet embassy. He said, Agent Hosty of the FBI has been to see my wife and offered her protection, and he put protection in quotes, and he said that she could stay in this country, that the visa he would arrange for her to, in effect,